Okay, hello, welcome to video for complex sentences with adjective clauses. As a reminder, an adjective is a part of speech that modifies or describes a noun or pronoun. Adjective clauses modify or describe nouns or pronouns, usually that they immediately follow in the sentence. These are the same as relative clauses. You probably learned them if you were at Burke in 9th and 10th grade as relative clauses. We're switching to the name adjective clause because it's also a relevant name for them, and it's much more relevant than the name relative clauses. So adjective clauses, they work like adjectives in the sentence. Elizabeth's wedding, which transpired on June 21st, was a joyous day for Dexter, who attended. So Elizabeth's wedding is being further described by this clause that comes after it, which transpired on June 21st. Dexter is being further described by this clause that follows it, who attended. Dexter attended. All right, the slightly tricky part about them is that they can be either restrictive or non-restrictive. Necessary, restrictive, or unnecessary, non-restrictive. So a restrictive clause does not use commas. It is necessary because it identifies something about its antecedent. An antecedent is something that it refers back to, usually that precedes it. It identifies its antecedent for the reader. So an example of restrictive. Dexter brought over the stuffed toy that resembles a meerkat. Here we can infer that Dexter has lots of stuffed toys, a duck, a goose, a rabbit, a cat, but he brought over the one that resembles a meerkat. So it's necessary information for us to know which toy it is, the toy that resembles a meerkat. So it's necessary, restrictive, no commas. Non-restrictive clause is not necessary for identification. It's just some sort of fun extra information. You use commas to separate it because it's non-restrictive, it's non-necessary. Dexter, who prefers toys from the National Zoo, lives in Washington, D.C. In this sentence, the fact that Dexter prefers toys from the National Zoo is not that important to the sentence. It's just a fun fact. So we separate it by commas. It's non-restrictive. All right, so this, after I explain the directions, you can pause and work on. In the following sentences, each following sentence has an adjective clause in it. I want you to find the adjective clause and ask yourself whether it's necessary in identifying something about its antecedent or whether it is not necessary. So if it is necessary, it won't have commas, and if it is not necessary, just a fun fact, it will have commas. So pause and try this exercise out. And welcome back. Here are the answers. My brother-in-law, who is from Central Pennsylvania, scandalously loves the New Jersey Devils hockey team more than the Flyers or Penguins. This is a non-restrictive, unnecessary piece of information. It's just thrown in there. He's from Central Pennsylvania. I just feel like mentioning that. I don't have two brothers-in-law, one from Milwaukee, one from Central Pennsylvania. The second one, the man whom my sister hired for the intern position impressed her with his poise and extensive volunteer work. In this sentence, we're identifying that it is restrictive. We don't need commas because we're identifying this is the man we're talking about here, the one whom my sister hired for the intern position. So it is restrictive. Third one, non-restrictive. Camp Hill, which is a small town in central Pennsylvania, has 2 antique stores. So it's just adding that information in there that it's a small town in central PA, but it's not necessary in identifying it. It's already pretty specific. It says Camp Hill. Students whose hopes are set on a maritime prom should start looking for available boats soon. This is restrictive, so we don't need commas. Students, a kind of general category, the ones who are set on a maritime prom need to start looking for boats, not the other students who wouldn't mind having their prom on land, for instance. The fifth one, my aunt married her childhood sweetheart, whom she had at first unsuccessfully pursued at age 15. This one could sort of go either way, but for the most part, when we refer to childhood sweethearts, we mean just one. We don't mean there's like 7 of them. So we consider it unnecessary information, so non-restrictive and set off by a comma. People who doubt the ferocity of swans will sorely regret this misguided contention after interacting with one. This is restrictive. People who don't doubt the ferocity of swans will be fine, but people who doubt it will regret it. So it's restrictive and we don't need commas. All right, some types. For people, we use who or that. People who use microwave ovens save time and energy. The book that I'm reading is about spiders. Non-restrictive, just who. Microwave cooking is not popular with most professional chefs who say that fast cooking steals the soul. Animals and things, we use that or which. Restrictive, ovens that use microwave energy are capable of cooking foods quickly. Restrictive, non-restrictive, which. Dasani water is sold at McDonald's, which is America's largest and most successful fast food chain. I made that statistic up, but I think it's true. Possessive adjective clauses use whose. Whose is the pronoun that should be used in place of a possessive word such as Mary's, his, our, their, the company's, etc. So it takes the place of, you don't need an apostrophe anymore when you use it. And in fact, the contraction WHO apostrophe S means something else. It means who is, not possessive. I returned the book whose cover was torn. I returned the book, the cover of which was torn. Some people think whose should only refer to people. So in this case, we wouldn't attribute the book agency by saying you could attribute it agency, the book whose cover was torn, or say the cover of which was torn. So you can replace of which for whose. Adjective clauses of time and place. When can be both restrictive and non-restrictive. The lives of Germans changed on the night when East German soldiers began building the Berlin Wall. So the bolded adjective clause there is describing the night. On November 9th, 1989, when the wall was torn down, their lives changed again. So this one is non-restrictive because we have that specific date there. So we're just adding some extra information about it, but we don't need to identify it. Place uses where. For place, we use where. The city where citizens had lived, worked, and shopped relatively freely was suddenly divided. That one's restrictive, so no commas. Berlin, where citizens had lived, worked, and shopped relatively freely, was suddenly divided. So we have the more general, the city, we need to identify it with the the adjective clause. So it is not separated by commas. It is restrictive. And then here, where we've already named it Berlin, we don't need the adjective clause to identify it. It's just some extra information. So it's non-restrictive and it's not separated by commas. All right, so a little simpler than last time, just those few different instances. Your homework is 2 parts. First, add an adjective clause to each of the following sentences. And second, write 4 additional sentences that contain adjective clauses. Include vocab words from the most relevant list, the one you'll next have a quiz on, in your sentences, and underline your adjective clauses. Have a great day.